Good morning, everyone. Jason Esswein again, marriage and family therapist. I wanted to talk about breathing, just the breath of life. A client recently reminded me of a situation that many people struggle with, and so if you are watching, thank you for that. Great point. I'm glad you brought it up. When we're around, especially when we're around other people, even just when we're alone, we often don't really focus on our breath. It's very shallow, and it's not just those full breaths. And we often don't breathe for many reasons. Conditioning, we've all been conditioned to more go into our head and not focus on our body, or really be more embodied, more just be in our thoughts. And there's many consequences to that when we don't breathe. I don't know if I'll really get into many of those right now. But one of the things you'll find, and we all need to breathe. We need to breathe deeply, because then we become more present, we become more conscious, we become more aware. And we're usually going to become more aware of how we're really feeling. Because when we're racing in our mind about tomorrow, about yesterday, about whatever, we're not really present. We're not fully embodied. We're basically just kind of walking, talking, floating heads, instead of really embodied and just more relaxed into our own skin. So anyway, this particular gentleman was referring to other people's reactions when he breathes. And I'm not talking about anything dramatic like, right? Nothing like that. Okay, that's kind of creepy and weird, right? But just like doing something like this, like say you're around people and you're feeling stress, or you're empathing their stress, or there's just a lot of stuff going on, just like that, just taking a normal, slow breath. And the person said, "Why are you doing that? What's that? Why are you doing that?" And we get that when we start to breathe deeply, and people aren't used to that, because most people, like I said, they're shallow breathing all the time, especially when we're racing in our mind and consumed with thoughts, and especially fear. When we're afraid, chances are good we're not breathing deeply. We're either hyperventilating or sometimes barely breathing at all. We're breathing barely enough to stay conscious. Just real shallow at the top of our chest. Nothing where we're really extending our belly and letting ourselves take in all of the nourishing, oxygen and breath that we need. So when we start to breathe deeply, you will be challenged, because when we're fully breathing, the ego, especially if it's trying to run the show, which in most of us it is often, it's trying to run the show. And when you're breathing, the ego is uncomfortable with that, because it can't manage that. And what happens is you start to become more conscious, and you start to think of it like this. When you're breathing deeply, you're pulling more light into your body. And you're also broadcasting more light, like more peace, more surrender, more relaxation, whatever. And the ego that is running the show is used to controlling things. Got to control. Do they like me? Do I like them? I don't know. What do they think about me? All these things. Am I good enough? I don't know. Am I too big, too small, too whatever? So the ego is used to trying to manage us like that. Whereas when we're breathing, we're actually surrendering more and more of our ego. And it's basically, it starts unraveling. And we start to feel different sensations that we didn't know were there. And then when we start doing that, we start to heal exponentially faster. It's remarkable what happens if we just focus on our breath. For example, and I quote Matt Kahn all the time, so I'm going to now kind of quote him a little bit. Meditation's great. If we were to meditate, I suggest doing it. If you're not used to it, maybe trying 5 minutes every morning. I like Headspace. That app is the best one I've ever seen and used, but you do your thing. Maybe you won't use an app at all. And it's great to do that in the morning, but even if you weren't meditating, if you could every other hour, and this is what Matt Kahn's quoted, every other hour, if you were just take a few moments, just to focus on your breath. That's it. You don't have to figure anything out. You don't have to anticipate what's going to happen. Just to focus on your breath every other hour. That would be a lot more productive. Because then when you're doing that, you are essentially in a more meditative state throughout the day. And we need to be able to carry that energy throughout the whole day, not just at a certain point of time, and then, okay, back to the head and racing thoughts and blah, 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 right? So when you do this, people will freak out. And Matt Kahn gives a wonderful example. I laugh every time I see it. And I'll just see if I can recreate that. But he goes, you want to be around a group of people, he said, you want to be around your family and have them say something and not be turned back into a 16-year-old? He says, just relax more than they are. So, someone at the dinner table, maybe they says, you know what your problem is? No, what? What's my problem? And then an ego that's unraveling as a result of you doing that gets uncomfortable. Why are you doing that? Sounds like you're sniffing something. It's like, no, I'm just relaxing my body and breathing and slowing myself down. Why are you doing that? It's weird. It's uncomfortable. And he takes a deep breath. Thanks for that feedback. I appreciate that. And people really freak out, especially if they're not used to breathing, and they think something's wrong when you're breathing. And it's almost like, the insanity of it is, it's almost like there's a rule that you're not allowed to breathe. Like, don't breathe. That's creepy if you think about it. Like, don't breathe. It's like, don't live. Don't be fully alive. And the collective consciousness is about that. It's very ego-based. It's about achieve, push, hide, attack, defend. All of those things that result in, you name it. And that's where fear comes in. Fear can come in when we're not breathing. Especially when we're not breathing. So it's about getting comfortable with the fact that other people aren't going to feel comfortable. They're not going to like it. One of the things you'll find is, if you take a deep breath, say you're at a meeting or maybe there's a lot of drama going on around you and you're paying attention to it and you're like, whoa, okay. So you need to breathe just to center yourself, because the world doesn't need more people that lose their center because of other people's stuff. And we've all done it. God knows I have. So when you're in a situation where there's a lot of chaos, all you need to do is practice relaxing in the presence of life. When there's chaos, breathe slowly. Relax your body as much as you can. You're not always going to do it. You're going to forget sometimes. Fine. That's why they call it a practice, because it takes practice. And when you start to allow yourself to breathe more deeply, more often, and just to slow your body down, that's when you start to tune into your gifts, because we all have gifts. We all have them. We all have a GPS that when we're connected to Source, ourself and Source, we start to know things we couldn't have possibly known. We start to experience things we couldn't have possibly experienced. Insight, intuition, ideas that are inspired come through. And it's important to remind yourself that when other people's fear starts getting stirred up as a result of you relaxing, you're going to be challenged. And there are many situations where if you take a deep breath, people go, what's wrong? Are you okay? Are you mad at me? Is everything okay? Just by going, just a breath. So it's important to remind yourself of the insanity of those social norms or those rules. And there's no accident that spiritual masters, time and time again, what are they often talking about? The breath. It's the breath of life. Some scriptures even say, well, in the beginning there was the Word. What was necessary before the Word? The breath. So, another way of saying it is, when people say turn to God, right? Well, just turn to Spirit, turn to God. Well, that's all great, but that can feel very esoteric to some people. So, I think I just lost Oh, there we go. Okay. So, when... See, I just forgot that. Let me see if I can pull that back up. Yes, here it is. So, if you want to really turn to God or turn to Source, what that really can be translated in is turn towards your breath. It's always back to the breath. Because if your mind's racing or there's overwhelming fears or feelings that come in, you can't think clearly when you're triggered. You can't. Even research shows that when we're triggered or upset, the blood flow leaves the frontal lobes of the brain and goes back into the primitive base of the brain. So literally, we cannot make good decisions when we're triggered. You can't. So when you relax your body, you start to have more access to better choices, more information, higher inspired information. So turning to God or Source or Spirit is, to me, synonymous with turning towards your breath. Start breathing. Because when our mind's racing, not a good place to act from. Not a good place. The results of that are usually either exhausting, destructive, not productive at the least. That's on a good day, not productive. So if the mind's racing and you're filled with a lot of static, mental noise, we all know that chatter. It's like static. It's like white noise. It could be in the form of fear of other people, fear of yourself, shame, regret, guilt, and all that stuff that really drains our energy and is really a waste of time. So breathing will help you access deeper parts of yourself and your connection to Source. And it's okay to feel uncomfortable when different things come through. I call it, and I've said this many times before, I call it the challenging triad. And that is fear. That seems to be the most difficult one. Fear, followed by anger, and then sadness. Sadness is a really good thing because then you're usually releasing tons of residue and pain that you no longer need to carry around. So when you're feeling these certain things, breath will help you sustain yourself through that. And remember, when you're feeling difficult emotions, you've done nothing wrong. One of the things that's common to do is, oh, I'm feeling uncomfortable. I must have done something wrong. Maybe I'm being punished for some karmic thing or a past life. Nonsense. Just being willing to feel it is healing it. That is one of the most accurate things I've heard in the therapist community is you have to feel it to heal it. That's all. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to figure out where it comes from. What does this mean? You just have to ask yourself, instead of what does this mean, what do I need? What do I need right now? Do I need to breathe? Chances are good that's going to be your best option, is just to breathe. Slow your body down and to focus on just breathing, even if you're not feeling good. So to remind yourself you've done nothing wrong and you don't need to feel bad about yourself for feeling bad. Just by feeling our sadness, for example, because sometimes the sooner you can get to sadness, the faster you release tons of stuff. And it's one thing to feel sadness. It's another thing to shame yourself or punish yourself or be angry at yourself because you're feeling sad. That just adds tons of insanity into a healing situation. So if you're just willing to feel it, we literally are releasing it. Just feeling it clears that from our energy field, and it actually helps us broadcast more peace and more light to those around us, and it gives them permission to breathe. It gives them permission to feel as well. So I think that's about it. I heard another quote by Matt Kahn. He said, "The breath is the only psychic protection you need." Instead of, oh, okay, bubble, shields up, whatever, and I clear my chakras, whatever. That stuff is a lot of superstition, in my opinion. It's one thing to ask for help. You can always ask Spirit for help. You can ask your guides. You can ask relatives who've crossed over. You can ask God. You can ask the angels. You can ask Mohammed, Jesus, Buddha, whatever resonates with you. If we ask for help, that's when other resources can show up. Because we live in a universe of free will, and we have to ask. And at least mentally, if I like to do it out loud. But when we ask for assistance, it'll be provided. But in the meantime, regardless of what you're asking for, focus on your breath. That is the key to deepening your relationship with yourself and Source, instead of relying on other people to give you the things that they either cannot provide or the things that only you can provide yourself. So that's about it. One more thing. Stop waiting for other people to be okay before you're okay. They call this emotional Robin Hood syndrome. Always making sure everyone's comfortable, everyone's happy and not sad before you can be okay. And this is all an inside job. You have to go on your own journey and release attachments to other people figuring it out, getting it, or breathing. Because when you're, I'm glad I remembered this. When you're breathing in the midst of chaos, and in certain ways you're breathing for the people around you that refuse to or are unwilling to breathe. And another con quote, a master doesn't need to tell other people to breathe. He just does what he would like them to do. So this is, I want to bring up one more tool. One of the most important things you could do for your loved ones, for the world, for anyone who's in pain and suffering. Say they're amped up. Say they're angry, they're upset, they're triggered, and their breathing is just... Obviously, you have thoughts about what you'd like them to do, right? You'd like them to slow down. You'd like them to relax. You'd like them to breathe, because that's what they need. However, the trap is trying to manage them. It's a trap. I promise you, it doesn't work. There's certain advice you can give at certain times that can be helpful, but unless someone's ready to hear what you're saying, they're going to delete everything you're saying. Like if someone's rolling their eyes, like when they're doing this, that's like them deleting everything you're saying. Like they're not ready to receive that information. So this is what you do when you're in a chaotic situation. I do this often, and it's profound what happens. It'll be amazing what happens to your day if you do this. Whatever you want them to do, you want them to slow down, you slow down. You want them to breathe, you breathe. Don't tell them what to do. Don't try to give advice. Don't. In fact, it can come off as very condescending when you say, relax when someone's upset. That can be one of the worst things you can tell someone sometimes. Or breathe, right? Yes, do they need to breathe? Yeah, but you need to breathe. Because often we're trying to control someone else because we're having a hard time empathing what they're feeling. So we're trying to shut them down so that we don't have to feel uncomfortable. You see this all the time with sadness and crying. Even, yes, women, you'd think women would be more comfortable with tears than men. No, not necessarily the case at all. When someone starts to tear up, someone starts to cry, and they're talking about something that's moving to them or they're starting to heal, what's one of the first things you'll see people do? They touch them. Oh, it's okay, right? Or everything happens for a reason. Or it'll be okay. What's often happening unconsciously, even though they're trying to be helpful, is the person who's listening to the person about to cry, it's reminding them of their own grief. It's reminding them of their own pain. And their relationship with sadness is very, very minimal or distant at best. So, because they're uncomfortable with sadness, they're trying to shut that person down who's starting to feel sadness. So, and they're trying to be helpful, but they're often caught in fear because a person's starting to tear up and they're like, oh, this can't be happening. This isn't okay. It's not okay for someone to cry. So they touch their knee or they touch their body. Guess what that does? When someone's touch can be very therapeutic. There are places for that, yes. But when you touch someone when they're starting to feel an intense emotion, it snaps them out of it. It can actually shut them down, and now they're focused on you, and they're no longer sitting with their own experience. And that's exactly what people need to heal. They need to sit with their own experience and feel whatever it is they're feeling and know that it's still okay. So be very mindful of when someone's starting to tear up, and be mindful of what's going on with you. So back to where I was before. Whatever you want someone else to do, you do. Don't tell them to do it. It doesn't work anyway. They're not listening. Most of them, they're not listening. Their minds are racing too fast. They're thinking about the future. They're thinking about what Tom thinks of them, or if Jessica's going to go to the party with Tina, and if Michael's going to be an hour late. Like, just nonsense stuff, right? You know, if whatever it is, it's just it's often noise about other people and what other people are doing. Stuff that does not help us at all. It really doesn't. It's just more, I call it mind fucking. Just mental noise, not helpful. So, whatever you want someone to do, you just do it. You want them to breathe? You breathe. You want them to be more present? You become more present. There's nothing more powerful than doing what you want other people to do. Take whatever you want them to do, and you do it more. Another level of this is, I'm finding this part of my journey is working on improving my nutrition. I want other people to take care of their bodies. Well, what am I going to put into mine? I want other people to breathe through their feelings. I want other people to be more present. Guess what? I need to be more present. So that's about it. Thank you for listening. And I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Thanks, guys. God bless.